Do you have a desire for something more in your Christian walk? Do you have a hunger for the deeper things of our God, whose name is Yahweh in Hebrew? Be encouraged, be inspired, be informed as you search out the truth. As it relates to the Christian and Hebrew history of our faith in Jesus, whose name is Yeshua in Hebrew. Dr. Larry J. Pratt and Rabbi Paul Todd will share the scriptures in our Bible that God said are forever and apply to all Christian believers. These scriptures will reveal the constitution and nature of the soon-coming kingdom of Yeshua, when he rules as our king on earth. In Matthew 25, there are 10 virgins who are called the bride of Jesus Christ, and they are righteous. But only 5 have enough oil. And what did Yeshua, Paul, and others intend for Christians to do when they said, "Follow me"? Is this a reference to the bride of Christ? Get your coffee, get comfortable, and hear a right now word of God of how Torah, or God's teaching and instruction, is to be written upon our hearts. This biblical wisdom will illuminate our Christian walk and help us to be the salt and light that is forever and has never changed. Learn the blessing prayers of Yahweh over his bride and our children and our grandchildren for greater blessing, such as protection, healing, revelation, and answers to many questions.
Well, I want to welcome everybody to Yeshua's Sabbath Church, and I'd like to say Shabbat Shalom, you all. It is just an absolutely beautiful Sabbath day here in beautiful North and cold North Sparta. That's okay. It's going to be cold for a couple of days, and then we'll be all tired and done with winter, and we'll make it go away, and we'll be fine. This is Tennessee, not Minnesota. Remember that. And it's not Alaska. Let us stop and focus on Sabbath. Stop all the... We're not in the week anymore. It's all over. Been gone since last night. We don't need to worry about it. The Sabbath is a covenant sign between Yahweh and his people. His people, Israel. If you bow for prayer, please. Avenu Melkenu, our Father, our King, we praise your set-apart name, Yahweh. We thank you for the invitation you gave to us for your Shabbat. We thank you that you have created that day, that we can stop and be with you. May you be pleased with our presence. May you be pleased with our praise and our worship, our reading and our study, our oneg, and even our little kids that we have here. We ask all of this in Yeshua's name. Amen. Amen. Let's do this opening reading. This is a reminder of what this Sabbath stuff's all about. And it's pretty easy, because it says, if you hold back your foot on Shabbat from pursuing your own interests on my set-apart day, if you call Shabbat a delight, Yahweh's set-apart day worth honoring, then honor it by not doing your usual things, or pursuing your interests, or speaking about them. If you do, you will find delight in Yahweh. I will make you ride on the heights of the land and feed you with the heritage of your ancestor Yaakov, for the mouth of Yahweh has spoken. I really like this part of the service. I don't know about the rest of you. It's a very important thing. The shofar, we need to hear this and remember its sound. So we have a blessing for the shofar. The shofar has just called us to attention as we continue in our liturgy to move step by step into Yahweh's presence. He provided only one method of salvation. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us the way of salvation, the Messiah Yeshua. Amen. Please stand.
Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is our Elohim. Yahweh is one. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity. Okay, we got to go over some history though first. One, Yahweh makes a covenant with that guy, Abram, who later became Abraham. That covenant is the entire key to everything. Understand that. We are either part of that covenant or we're not. You're either born into the covenant, which I really don't think there's a whole lot of people that can definitely prove they're born into the covenant, or you're grafted into the covenant. Only two choices. That's it. But you got to be in that covenant. Now, Yahweh promises Abraham that whole land of Canaan and a physical multiplicity of his zerah, his seed, his kids, people that come from his loins, who comes from one kid, Isaac, who comes from another kid, Jacob, who comes from 12 kids, the 12 sons of Jacob. That's how it works. Seed multiplied to the point where there's a lot of them. He's told it the promise of physical multiplicity. I have to use those words because that's the important word. Will be so vast and so extensive that the entire earth will literally be filled with his seed. Now we're going to see how an adoption really works shortly. It's right there in our reading. So how does his seed become all of us here? What are we dealing with? 3,000 years later-ish? Something like that? More than 3,000, I think. I don't know how many. A whole buku years. The promise and the blessing is renewed in Genesis, where Abram is told that this promise will establish him as the father of many nations, or the term is Hamon Goyim. Now, this is Yahweh speak. As for me, look, my covenant is with you, and you shall become a father of many nations. Many nations means Hamon Goyim. That's the Hebrew for it. So let's do one of our little word studies. We're going to start doing this more and more. All right. Hamon. It means many. It also means, or more accurately, it really means murmur, roar, crowd, abundance, tumult, sound, noise. Goy, Gentile, nations. Non-Israelite, one of them. Okay? Jews will say it means a non-Jew. No, sorry. It really means just people. Gentile nations. And it meant all them nations around Abraham. So this term, Hamon Goyim, literally means this: a noisy multitude of Gentile nations. Have you had a look at the earth these days? That, by the way, is a noisy multitude of Gentile nations. Some also say that this word or this term can refer to a noisy multitude like a mess of fish. Big wad of fish in a net. Something about Yeshua told him, go cast your net over there and see what you catch. And they catch what, 153 fish? All kinds of fish. 153 is 153 nations. It's the Goyim. It's the Hamon Goyim. I saw a short little YouTube video of them doing a big catch of redfish up in the Icelandic waters, and they had this net, must have been miles long, and this thing was full of fish. That's what it is. Okay, let's jump forward and get all the way to Jacob. We might say, well, Isaac isn't all that interesting, but he needed to be there very, very much because he bore Jacob. Oh, and he bore Esau too. That's another message. All right, at the end of Genesis, Jacob, or Israel, is about to bless his sons. Important time. Now he's going to bless Joseph's two sons first. You're reading the story the way it goes along. He blesses Joseph's two boys. Then he goes ahead and he calls the other guys and they all sit down and they all get blessed. And then he says to Joseph, your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land, are mine. They are mine. Just like my natural sons, Reuben and Shimon. That's the adoption. That's what adoption means. Adoption doesn't mean, as we kind of see it here, well, now you got the name, our name, but you really came from someplace else. Actually, no. You came from me. You're mine. You are exactly like those two other guys. So when we are adopted in, we become exactly like Reuben and Shimon, Judah and Levi. We are physically Jacob's kids. So he blesses the two boys. When he's doing this, several things are taking place. This is actually his last will and testament, his last will and testament over to two boys, and he's doing it right in front of Joseph, Joseph being the witness, and there's probably a bunch of other people around too. He officially adopts the boys so that Joseph, who is, by the way, his most beloved son, coat-omitting colors thing, all right, can receive a double portion of the blessing through his sons. Joseph doesn't get the blessings. His sons get the blessing. But that blessing isn't going to come right away anyway, and everybody knows it. It's going to come ahead sometime in the future. They don't know when. So Joseph knows it's to his seed. And now it's official. He gets double the blessing because Ephraim and Manasseh will each get a piece of the land. And I think Pastor is going to talk about that. He also says these two kids are Israel. He calls them Israel. He not only adopts them, but it's a prophecy he's declaring over them that the physical promise of the multiplicity given to Abraham way long time ago comes through them. Here's what it looks like. Oh. Here's how he does it. Let my name be called upon them. And he says this, let my name, Israel, be called upon them in 48:16. So he blesses Ephraim and Manasseh. Now what he's going to do is, instead of putting his right hand on the older boy, the firstborn, he puts it on the younger boy, and then he crosses his hands over. It uses that word, crosses his hands over. This kind of bugs Joseph. I mean, he's, whoa, Dad, come on, man. I mean, you're not that bad off. Don't do that. This one's the older and this one's the younger. And he says some very, very, very great things. In Genesis 48:19, one of the most important prophecies of Scripture. And it just goes unnoticed. I know it does in the church. They ain't got a clue. Here's what it is. His father refused. I know, my son, I know. He's going to be a great people, but his younger brother is greater than he. His seed is to become the completeness of the nations, or the fullness of the Gentiles. Translation things. The seed, or zerah, of Ephraim will become the Malo HaGoyim. Malo HaGoyim means the fullness of the Gentiles. Malo, see it? Malo HaGoyim. I put that there as a slide so we know that. Here's a little word study. Malo means fullness, that which fills mass multitude. It doesn't mean full bucket, like if you had a bucket full of water. That's not it. It's fullness as in a whole concept of everything. This is going to be a mass multitude of the Gentiles. It will be all of them, or nearly so. And the word goy, we already know. Ha-goyim means nations, people. We already saw that. The physical seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that was promised, that will literally one day fill the earth as the sand of the sea and the dust of the earth, the stars of the heaven will come to pass through Ephraim. Was just said. The fullness of the Gentiles. That's how it's going to happen. Ephraim's children will be everybody. All of the nations. Now, it's interesting to note, it's kind of rare that you see words used only just like one or two times. This one's used twice. The word malo, fullness, and it's used in Psalm 24:1, where it says, wait a minute, all right, the earth belongs to Yahweh and all that fills it. Remember that? It's also part of the hand-washing blessing. The earth belongs to Yahweh and all that fills it, the world and all those who dwell in it, and those that have access to the holy mountain are the ones with clean hands. All right, what did I have here before? The earth is full of peoples, places, and things that belong to Yahweh. He made them. Something that's misunderstood. He can do whatever he wants with them. Thus, the land of Israel is his. And he can do anything he wants with it. And all our arguing, fighting, and stamping feet, and crying and whining doesn't mean anything to him at all. Oops, where was I? There's not anything on earth not that does not belong to Yahweh. Okay. There will also be virtually no one on earth, I gotta find where I am here, that somehow doesn't belong to the seed of Ephraim. Long time ago, I mean, back maybe 35, 40 years ago, I was thinking, well, what about people that live way out in the Amazon, in some little place out there in the Amazon? That don't never see anybody. Or how about those people in Papua New Guinea? You ever see that? There's people out there that they said to us had never been any contact with humans. They got cell phones. But somehow everybody's going to belong to Ephraim. Somehow. They're either going to be physically belonging or adoptedly belonging. It's not going to be, he has to affect everybody. We'll see why. He's got to go and affect every single human being. Like that. He's got the whole world in his hands. Is this the fullness of the Gentiles? I don't think there's any place on earth that hasn't got some kind of reception. There are African villages that don't have clean water, but they have internet. They got cell phones all over the world. They know. They've heard this gospel. Yahweh has seen to it. The reason the technology exists today is for us to spread that word, to spread this here word. Not 10 years ago, what we're doing here with the YouTube thing would not have been very easy to do. I'm very thirsty these days. All right, so Rav Shaul, wait a minute. We just jumped from the Old Testament to the New Testament to Paul, the ringleader of the Christian church who did away with the Torah, the Old Testament. Not so.
It says, and this is VaYechi. How do you say that, Rabbi? Oh, I can't say that. VaYechi. VaYechi. And it's today's Tevet 11. So it says, and he lived, or and he dwelt. So, Jacob comes to the land. That was how God showed Joseph to get his dad and everyone, all the family, into Egypt. And he said, and then, then Jacob lived 17, he finally had peace for 17 years. So, if you've been in turmoil most of your life, maybe in your later years you're going to have peace. That's what I pray. That's my prayer for you. And that's been my prayer for me and my wife and our family. So Genesis 47:28, it says, Jacob lived at peace for 17 years in Goshen. Now Abraham and Isaac called their sons to give, Abraham and Isaac, Jacob's parents, grandparents, called their sons to give the firstborn blessing to the child who would carry on. Because I try to look at the big picture. See, I try to look at the big picture. The big picture is from Genesis, or from the Garden of Eden, all the way to Revelation, the millennial reign, and the new heavens and new earth. So hopefully you'll see in this Torah portion today that there's a future fulfillment of a lot of prophecy still to occur. Abraham and Isaac called their sons to give the firstborn blessing to the child who would carry on the priestly blessing, with a blessing to rule over the other brothers with a double portion monetary blessing. The firstborn blessing usually goes to the firstborn son, unless the firstborn is not interested in Torah. That happened, didn't it? It happened with Esau, happened with Ishmael, correct? And some of, and Jacob, I think, knew this with Joseph. Some of the brothers weren't very interested in Torah, Isn't it against the commands or against Torah to commit murder? put your brother in a pit? I think so. So they weren't very interested in it. And Jacob, I think, recognized this in Joseph. And then later he changed Judah because of a lot of stuff, and we taught on that last week, how Judah had to be changed to love Torah. So the firstborn blessing usually goes to the firstborn unless the firstborn is not interested in Torah, because the purpose of this blessing is to help create a nation of God's people called Israel. That's the purpose of the firstborn blessing. Now Jacob does it different, didn't he? And Rabbi spoke of it. There are 3 sons who will love Torah: Joseph's sons and Judah. Jacob calls Joseph first to bless Joseph's sons. Then Jacob calls the other 11 brothers. This event is prophetic of how Israel will be divided one day to reunite into one kingdom called Israel in the last days. Normally the father blesses each son, but in this event Jacob adopts Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and blesses them before he blesses the other 11 sons. We should know why Jacob blesses Joseph's 2 sons first. They represent the 10 lost tribes that will unite during Revelation or Jacob's trouble. This is the mystery. See, this is the mystery, and Rabbi touched on it, that Paul talked about, that Christianity doesn't understand. It's a mystery, and it's a mystery to Christians today. Is to help reveal this mystery to them, but only God can actually open up their hearts, their minds, and their ears. Genesis 48, verse 5. Your 2 sons who were born to you in Egypt are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, just like my other sons. They are blessed by the grandfather. It's called adoption, heirs. And you know, when we believe in Yeshua, we are joint heirs with Christ, right? So now, verse 16. Now Ephraim and Manasseh shall be called by my name, one name, Israel. So you're getting a little repetition here because Rabbi talked about it. So I want to show that. I want to show the map here. We can go to my slides. Okay, and y'all have got this handout. So we're talking about the 12 tribes, and pretty much say if you look, the red line there represents south of that's the southern kingdom, north is the northern kingdom. And as we talk about it, and also in the notes, you'll see that most of the people that were in the southern kingdom kind of left, except for Judah. Judah didn't leave, and Benjamin didn't leave. And Levi, when the kingdom split, they went. Some of them went north, some of them stayed in the south. But eventually, most of the Levites came back to live in the south. So that's how you get, but mainly the southern kingdom is Benjamin and Judah. And the northern kingdom, made up of Manasseh and Ephraim here, and that shows kind of their territories and how they migrated out of that area. So that's in your little handout there. And it's good to have in the future as we discuss it. And then on the second page there, it discusses all of the tribes. So you can look at that. So, this adoption of Ephraim and Manasseh, it's the mystery. It's a last days prophecy of how all 12 brothers will unite into Israel to become one nation. Verse 17 to 22. Jacob proceeds to give the material double portion blessing to Ephraim and Manasseh, and with that monetary blessing, or with that double portion blessing, comes wealth, okay? And if they're going to someday inherit the earth and rule, they have to have military powers. This helps purchase that military power. So if you look at England, and I'm going to connect Ephraim and Manasseh to the United Kingdom that took the gospel to the lost sheep all over the world, and United States as Manasseh, who continued the gospel being taken all over the world, they had to have power. Because, if they had not have had power, then some other nation would have had power, and the gospel, I've been sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, may not have gone all over the world, see? So the blessings, the material wealth went to Ephraim and Manasseh. Then in Genesis 49, verse 1, Jacob calls the other brothers to tell them how this blessing he just gave to Joseph's sons and to them will play out in the last days. And I put several dates there. You can look at that. But these are dates when things happened in the past. Jacob says that Ephraim's descendants will be famous. They will fill the nations. Has Christianity not filled the nations? Become many nations? And just like Rabbi said, nearly everyone has heard about Yeshua. Because my son even was a missionary to Papua New Guinea. He was over there. He learned their language. And he had lots of friends over there in Papua New Guinea. It says, and the nations represented by Ephraim shall rule the other nations via great wealth and military might. The Commonwealth of the United Kingdom fits this role to a T. England spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and evangelized nearly every nation on the earth. Then Jacob blesses Manasseh and says that Manasseh shall be a single great nation. So was not England a multitude of nations? The Commonwealth, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. And at one time, if you think about it, most every nation of the earth was at some time believed in Jesus. Even Russia, even Iran, even Pakistan, Afghanistan, they all believed in Jesus. But later, they were conquered by other people. But the word did go to all these nations. And is not the United States a single great nation today? And we're just carrying on what Ephraim started. So in Genesis 49, verse 1, Jacob calls all the sons to him, all 13, and says, I will tell you what will happen to you at the end of days. Did you know that this is Jacob prophesying about Revelation and Jacob's trouble? He's saying this is what's going to happen to you at the end of days. So something to happen in 721, something to happen in 586, something that will happen in 70 AD. When is the end of days? For Ephraim, it was in 721. For Judah, it was in 586. For the Pharisees and Sadducees, it was in 70 AD. And Jacob's trouble, which is about to occur, it could be the last days for Christianity. And I hope to kind of connect that here in just a minute. But the last days is also after the 1,000 years, isn't it? Because Satan's loose for a season, and then the new heavens and new earth. So as you read the scriptures, look at the big picture and the fact that last days could also apply to even after the millennial reign. And then there's some detail there about the other tribes and how certain tribes did not secure their land. Remember, Moses said, "Now you go in." God told Moses, I'm going to take you through Joshua into the land, but then you got to drive out the enemies to secure it." And see, some of them didn't do a very good job of that. They didn't secure the land, so they eventually became lost or scattered. Ephraim and Manasseh, they were exiled to Assyria and migrated to Europe. They were the largest people group to be exiled. They are the 10 lost tribes. The only tribe that is known today, and it's simply because of historical records, to say that this person is a Levite, this person is a Kohen, and because these people, through historical records, are known to be Levites and Kohen, then they tested their DNA, And then if you have similar DNA today, you know that you are from that tribe, Levi and Judah. Now you say, well, what about there's some tribes in Africa and China that say they're from this particular tribe or that particular tribe. There's no actual proof of that. It's genetically, okay? And maybe some historical stuff, but no actual proof of it. So, in a way, 12 of the tribes were lost, in a way. Genesis 49, verse 10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the student of the law from between his feet, because Judah taught Torah. And being a student of the law, that's how you learn Torah. You teach it right on your gates, your doorpost, your heart. Teach it to your children. That's how you were to teach Torah. Until Shiloh, and I put here Yeshua or Torah, because Yeshua is Word in the flesh. He is Torah. Comes to rule and teach. When to Judah will be the gatherings of peoples, all the tribes in the last days. So he's going to gather. So this verse, Genesis 49:10, the scepter should not depart from Judah, nor the student of the law from between his feet, until Shiloh or Torah comes to rule and teach. When to Judah will be the gathering of peoples, all the tribes in the last days. So this gathering to Judah, where Torah is taught, occurs in the last days for all peoples of the earth to return to Torah. But it's been expressed to all of Ephraim, like Rabbi said, all over the earth. But how many are going to hear and return? Shiloh. It's used 33 times in our Bible. It's only used one time as a person or persons. The other 32 times it's used as a place. Shiloh. Hebrew letters of the word Shiloh with meanings by Rabbi Michael L. Monk, The Wisdom in the Hebrew Alphabet. So if you use the Hebrew letters Shiloh, that's Hey, which means behold. Lamed means shepherd's staff. King of kings, to teach. Yod. So I'm trying to figure out who Shiloh is here. We know it's Yeshua. But in the last days, is it possible, and I'm just giving you some information here to help you see that it might be possible that it's more than just Yeshua in heaven. Okay? And also the Yod, which is the arm or the hand or power, and Shin, which is teeth, means to consume. So in a way, you might could read that verse. Behold, Shiloh, Yeshua, who comes with the staff, authority, the scepter, and with his hand, Yeshua will consume with divine power the sin of the earth in the last days. The fulfillment of the Gentiles. This is about to happen. Another thought is that this verse is a prophecy about the two witnesses who are an obedient people, and they yield the same power of Yeshua. How could they do that? They do it in the name of Yeshua. Isn't that how Yeshua said how to pray? When they asked him how to pray, how do you pray? He says, thy will be done. Pray, thy will be done on earth. And then he said, do it in my name. Okay? Revelation 11. Then Yeshua comes in Revelation 19 to finish the job. All sin destroyer are locked up. So then it said, then the 1,000-year kingdom age will begin with the teaching of Torah to the entire world. The Jewish people were judged for their failure to teach the world Torah. Listen, if you're online or if you're on TV or Facebook or whatever, Christianity must be judged for their failure to teach the world Torah. It's a parallel. If it happened once, could it happen again? Torah, which is Shiloh, Yeshua, came in 31 AD, but does not rule all yet. He's not been sent back as King of Kings. Yeshua is a high priest today. He does not sit on his throne as king. That doesn't happen until Revelation 22, after the 1,000 years. Until then, we can pray in Yeshua's name for this authority or this scepter. This is what the two witnesses do. Don't they call fire down from heaven? Okay? And his scepter is on earth spiritually by using Yeshua's name. And this is what the Lord gave me about the scepter. And he taught that to me this week. And, you know, he may teach you something a little different with it, but this is a very important prophetic verse. Because, you know, in I think it's 2 Peter. I don't know if I've got that note here, but I'll look for it here in a minute. Okay, so because prophecy is very, very important. Okay, Peter said, the only sure thing or convincing thing to a people is prophecy. He says, because even if I tell you that I saw Yeshua come in his glory at his second coming with Elijah and Moses, that's okay, but that's not as the important as prophecy. Prophecy is very important. So where do these two witnesses who teach Torah come? And is the throne of David still on the earth with one who rules? 2 Chronicles 6:16 says, there will be a person in man's sight that sits on this throne forever. So, you know, if I read that verse, then I got to look for that throne somewhere. If it says it's forever, King David's throne, where is it? And I just put this in there. Could this be represented by Queen Elizabeth? Has she taught Torah? No. Did the Pharisees and Sadducees in Yeshua's day teach Torah like they should? No. But they still had that scepter then, didn't they? And so if that scepter was transferred from Judah in the chapter of Jeremiah, that Judah lost the scepter, where did it go? That's what I'm trying to connect with you. And part of this is if you're interested in this, you just have to get into it yourself. So you can also read those other verses there that I mentioned. There's lots of verses on it. Okay, this family tree is complicated. It takes study. You know, as the Lord was showing me some of this week, and I went to several sources to study, I was still changing some of it this morning, okay? Because it's complicated. Why is it complicated? Because in our Bible, sometimes they use more than one word for the same person. And a lot of the words sound alike, you know, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachim. They changed its name to Zedekiah and all that stuff. You know, it gets a little complicated. But I truly believe this genealogy here is correct. And next year I may come back and correct a little of it. But I truly believe it's correct. So you can look at that. But in our Bible it says that Jehoiakim, who was the next to the last king of, or he may have been the third from the last, king of Judah, our Bible says, Jehoiakim shall not have a son to sit on my throne. But if we just read in those other verses that there's always going to be a son to sit on his throne, what's about to happen here? Well, Jeremiah describes it in detail. It says, however, King Hosea, who is the previous king of Judah, before Zedekiah, will have a granddaughter who is from Judah. And she will marry a descendant of Zerah. Remember, Judah had two sons. Pharez, where the scepter went to Yeshua at his first coming. There was another son, Zerah. So if Pharez lost the scepter's in heaven now. Is there a people group somewhere in the world that is exercising this scepter? And I'm saying that there is. And that this throne, it says, God told Jeremiah, I have ordained you from birth to be a prophet to the Gentiles, to the nations, to tear down Perez line where the scepter was and rebuild it. And it was rebuilt in Ireland where these tribes migrated. That's what we study on Wednesday at 3. Where all these tribes migrated when they left the land of Israel. Where did they go? And did they know their identity then? And many of them did, okay? So maybe if these daughters of Zedekiah, remember Zedekiah's 2 sons, who would have been the king of Judah, were killed. Zedekiah's eyes were punched out, okay? But it says in the scriptures in Jeremiah that Zedekiah's daughters were taken by the ruler in Jerusalem at that time, along with Jeremiah the prophet and Baruch the scribe, and they went to Taphanes, Egypt. Then they left Taphanes, Egypt, and they went by boat to Ireland. That's what we teach about on Wednesdays. How did they get from Egypt to Ireland? And then she marries one of the descendants of Zerah, the other son of Judah. Now the Davidic line through Judah can continue. It's just been changed a little bit. It's in Ireland. It's in Europe. Okay? And then they say that every king of Ireland and England had to sit on a stone and be coronated as king. So since that time, since they went there, every king or queen of England and Ireland has been coronated on that stone. Now, who's the last one right now? It's Queen Elizabeth. She was coronated on that throne or that special chair that they had to coronate kings. So what I'm saying is maybe that throne, David's throne, which would be forever, is still here on the earth. It's going to be replaced because they've done it imperfect, just like the Jews did it wrong at the end and they had to be judged. Christianity has done the same thing. They're going to be judged, okay? So I probably anyway. This is something you have to study. It's very deep. So, the Davidic kingdom and rule has never completely disappeared. It just left the land of Judah, and Christians have access to this authority, this scepter, by using in prayer the name of Yeshua. And then Genesis 49:33, back to the scriptures. It says, when Jacob finished blessing his sons, he drew up his legs and died. Genesis 50, verse 1 through 9. Jacob is embalmed, and Joseph, his brothers, and all of Egypt go to bury Jacob in Hebron. And there's some detail there. Some of it's from the book of Jasher. I'm not going to get into it. But in essence, what they say in Jasher is that Esau was waiting on Jacob at the cave of the patriarchs. That's what it says in the book. And that he wasn't going to let Joseph bury his father Jacob in the cave. But then Joseph said, well, we've got a document back. So he sends Naphtali back to get the document to prove. Well, anyway, it says Esau died there because they started a battle. Anyway, that's extra biblical, but I just thought it was interesting. That's in the book of Jasher, which is quoted twice in our Bible. And then in the Haftarah, King David said to his son, right before he was about to die, and he wanted to bless his son Solomon, and pretty much he says the same thing, do Torah, you and your descendants, so that there will always be a man to sit upon the throne of Israel. But he didn't do it. That is until Shiloh comes. Okay, Matthew 15:24 says, but he answered and said, just as Yeshua, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Who was Jesus sent to, or Yeshua sent to? Who claims him today? 1 Peter 1 through 9. The Apostle Peter writes a letter to the strangers or exiles, the elect or pilgrims, God's chosen people. Could they also be Gentiles or lost sheep? And if you read this, and this is in the... Okay, I'll read. Keep it on that right there. And this is what... this is 1 Peter 1:1. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. This is where the Ephraimites lived, right in here. Where did Paul was a prophet to the Gentiles, to teach the Gentiles. Where did Paul's journeys go? This area. Where did Peter go? This area. And we teach on that on Wednesday. So, has this prophecy back in Genesis, VaYechi, Torah portion, to Ephraim and Manasseh, a multitude of nations and a single great nation, been fulfilled? Rabbi told you, yes. And there's your verse in 2 Peter about how important prophecy is. And then just a couple other little verses, Numbers 24 to 17. There shall come a star out of Jacob and a scepter out of Israel. Hebrews 1:8. Unto Yeshua thy throne is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness, a scepter of the kingdom. See, that's what's going to be set up during the 1,000 years, is this kingdom. And the scepter is going to rule from Jerusalem. Judaism was not one with the Father in Yeshua's day. It was not one with the Father. Did not Yeshua rebuke them quite often? He says, I and my Father are one. Believe me, Christianity is not one with the Father. And wasn't that Yeshua's prayer, that you be one with him and the Father? And you know what's going on within Christianity. I'm not talking about every single little church. There's some great churches out there, okay? But I'm talking about in general. They're not one with the Father. When you see some of the stuff happening in certain denominations, it makes you want to throw up. When Yeshua said to Peter that upon this rock the gates of hell shall not prevail, Yeshua is talking about a remnant. He's not talking about all these churches. Yeshua is speaking to a remnant, the early church that came out of Judaism. This remnant was willing to be one with Yeshua and the Father. If Christianity is not one with the Father, then a remnant, the latter church, must come out of Christianity. Can you not see the parallel here? The ark authority that was in Shiloh, Ephraim, Shiloh was in Ephraim, was removed because of their sin, and the ark was removed from Judah by some say by Jeremiah because of Judah's sin. So will the authority of Christianity be removed because of their sin? So right now, the church can pray in Jesus' name, Yeshua's name, right? But if at some point that authority is removed from them, when they pray, Yeshua help me, but that authority's been removed, just like it was back then from Shiloh and from Judah, because all those people, Yeshua said, not one of you, very few, he wept for them. He said, now, very few of you are going to be living in 40 years. That authority, they lost it back then. They lost the scepter. And I'm saying the same thing is about to happen to Christianity. They can still pray. I've prayed in Yeshua's name, Jesus' name, before I ever came into this walk, and I've had prayers answered. But is there coming a point when that authority will be removed from Christianity? And I'm saying, yes, there is. At some point, Yahweh will cease to hear the prayers of Christians when they pray in Jesus' name. They're going to lose the scepter. Jeremiah's prophecy to Jerusalem in 586 BC. Jeremiah 7:12 to 15. Jeremiah says, or God said, Yahweh says, "Go now to my place which was in Shiloh in the land of Ephraim, where I made my name dwell at the first." Because Joshua, see, he was from Ephraim, from the tribe of Ephraim, took it there, put it there. And see that I destroyed Shiloh because of their wickedness. Now, because you do not hear my words, Judah, Jerusalem, I will destroy Jerusalem and the house which is called by my name, as I did in Shiloh. I will cast you out of my sight, as I have cast out all your brothers called Ephraim. So, if you draw a parallel, that which has been is that which shall be. Let's read Jeremiah's prophecy here to Christianity. See what I did to Shiloh and to Judah. Christians, listen up. See what I did to Shiloh and to Judah, where I made my name dwell. And see that I destroyed Shiloh and Jerusalem because of the wickedness of my people. Now, because you do not hear my words, I will destroy the Christian nations because of the wickedness of my people. I will destroy your churches that are called by my name, as I did to Shiloh and Jerusalem. I will cast you out of my sight, as I have cast out your Israelite brothers in the land. But there is a remnant today that hear the words of Yahweh and obey his words, just like there was in Yeshua's day. There's always a remnant. The spiritual ark and scepter will then be held by a remnant taken out of Christianity. And I'd like to say it's my prayer and my desire, and I know it's rabbis, for you, everyone here, and everyone listening online, be the remnant. It really isn't that hard to do. It's fun. Yeshua did Torah, and we can too. So how did Yeshua tell us to pray? Thy will be done on earth. If something goes against the promises, morality, and blessings of Yeshua, of Yahweh, then we have authority in Yeshua's name, the scepter, and greater work shall you do. John 14 to 12. So, Rabbi, like I say, it's just a little deep in places, but it's a good study, and I recommend it.
Now you need a blessing, yes? All of us. Believe me, I think everybody here wants a blessing. I want one. Please stand and receive the name of Yahweh. Yivarekaka Yahweh ve'ishmereka. Yair Yahweh panaveleka v'kuneka. Yisa Yahweh panaveleka v'asem lacha shalom. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom. Shabbat shalom, everybody.